Good morning. I'm Laura, and I'm a programs coordinator here at Great Roots Museum and Archives. And I'm so excited you can join us this morning. So this morning, we're just going to go over a few housekeeping tips before we get started. And one of those housekeeping tips is, if you're new to Zoom, we're going to keep your cameras off and your microphones. If you have any questions or want to have any responses sent in to us, just type them into the chat box and we'll get to them. If we aren't able to get to them during the program, then I will email you directly following. And if you're watching the recorded version of this program, you're welcome to email me anytime with any questions you have. So before we get to the nitty-gritty and making the tie-dye with the markers, I just wanted to ask a really quick question. Because one of the things when I was developing the kits for the summer, I was thinking about things that I didn't do that much of before March 2020 when we had to go into lockdown from the pandemic. And one of the things that I started doing a lot more of is sewing. And that was because I need masks. So is there anything out there that a new skill that you developed or something that you got back into over the past year? If you have a response, you can take it into the chat box. I'm very curious to know. And we can look it up later. So we are going to get started now, and I hope everyone has their supplies ready. So we're actually going to move over to a special work area we have set up. This is your work here. And so this craft kit, it was first developed looking at the blog called The Craft Hatch. And with that activity, it was very interesting and exciting because I love tie-dye. So it was a completely different way to do tie-dye. But she started with pre-made masks. And I'm sure all of you know, every face is different. We're all different shapes, different sizes. And it's really hard to say, yep, this is a mask that will fit everybody who buys this kit. So we're going to start with the basics and go back to some plain material. And then you can create your own mask using whatever pattern you prefer, or if you have a friend that sews, they can sew it. But it's just going to be something special that you made and decorated and designed on your own. So thank you for joining us. And one of the most important things for this craft is to prepare your area. So as you can see, I have a plastic white tablecloth bag put down over my workspace just so it keeps it protected, because as soon as we add the rubbing alcohol, the marker from that you put on the material, it may bleed through, and you want to protect whatever's underneath. And that way too, it also keeps things controlled, because one of the greatest things that I found is if you maybe use a little too much rubbing alcohol, it actually is helpful because you can just sop it up with your material and then you can add to it. So this is what we'll do, but I'll show you one of my many examples when I was testing this out. So this is the side where the marker was put on, and then the rubbing alcohol went right over top. And because I folded it, doesn't seem like there's much over here, but as soon as you flip it over, there's even more. And this was actually the layers underneath of that. So you can do it just a single fold, and that will keep the designs, if you're drawing like specific designs, like you want hearts, circles, or letters, you could keep those and just do that across the entire stretch of fabric. For mine, I really like how it softens up and it really looks like regular tie-dye, even though it's marker. So I'm definitely going to fold over my material. And this is a really important part where adults also are involved, just because rubbing alcohol, poisonous, flammable, So we want to make sure we're really safe when we're hand filling it, and it's not left anywhere where super little hands or little hands wouldn't get it. Now, we did this demo outside, on a nice windy day, wearing our masks. And we could actually still smell the markers and the alcohol through the mask. So I definitely suggest outdoors. For filming purposes, we're just indoors today. But if you do it outside, it actually makes it dry really fast. Because one of the great things is, I'm sure you've done with hand sanitizer, your hands dry really fast because of the alcohol. So when you're using the rubbing alcohol and if you're doing it outside, it'll dry in under an hour. Now, I have this here. Unfortunately, we had a slight issue and we had to we're using hand sanitizer today. But we're just gonna pour it on. And as you can see, it's not just going straight through like what the alcohol does. But I'm gonna pat this and get it worked in, and then you can already see the color is starting to bleed through. So I'm gonna keep doing that. There's a lot bled through. So when you use the liquid rubbing alcohol, it will be almost instant, which is lovely. It's so fun to see all the different colors moving around. And what I was assured by the staff person who put the markers into the kits was that they were looking at the color chart or a color wheel while they did so. And on your instructions, you'll be able to see the color wheel just on the bottom front. And an important thing to remember is sometimes the colors mix together to make color colors. So primary colors is what we start with, is always yellow, blue, and red. And if we mix red and blue, we get purple. And then green comes from yellow and blue, and orange from red and yellow. However, when you match other colors like red and green who are directly across from one another on the color wheel, you're going to get brown. So it's something to keep in mind when you're mixing your colors. And if you're ever wondering what it's going to turn out like, you have quite a bit of white material. So you can always just practice with a little corner and see how it turns out and see what the color mixing will end up looking like. And sometimes you might be surprised because in one of my early experiments at home with this, my black marker actually turned out to be purple. So it was purple and green instead of black and green. So that was really interesting to see. And you can see here, even just this hand sanitizer kind of is creating a halo around the different shades as it saturates the fabric and it goes through. So it's always one of the greatest things is just seeing what can happen with it. Because that's one of the things that's great about doing crafts like this is everyone's final product, the final piece of art is going to be something different. And that's what makes it special because we don't all want to wear the same masks. We want to look a little bit different. So once you are completely satisfied with how your dye is turned out, you can put it in the dryer on high for 15 to 20 minutes. Now, if you're not totally happy with it, and I get it, I wasn't totally happy with this version. So I went back and I had added more marker and added more rubbing alcohol and actually had folded it more. So then that's why there's that linking of color. So the bottom layers were actually more colorful than the top. And I was very happy with it. Now with this one, I'm not completely ready to get started making a mask because so before you ever move on to another step, even if you're not making a mask, I would definitely suggest after you do your heat set that you do a nice hot iron just to get all of the wrinkles out. And then you can just double check too if you're happy with how it looks. Because as long as those markers are producing color, you can keep going back and doing more and adding more. And that's a really fun thing because that's not something that you get to do with my art. It's kind of usually once and then we hope for the rest. So with this, we would be ready to move on after we were happy Now, with this, we're also going to talk about, pattern types. So when you want to choose your pattern, there's so many different masks out there. So this is one of my early ones. It's just like the pleated mask. That was one of my early ones. This one was made by my mom. She found the pattern on SewShePen, and that link is in your instructions. So this one's called an Olsen mask, and then it has a little pocket for the filter. Because you have the filter material inside your kit, this one's already cut, you could try a different type. Instead of doing the traditional Olsen, it can just be like a regular one, but this was a good size for, it fit my 2-year-old and my 4-year-old. But my 4-year-old's favorite mask is now, not this one specifically, because I wasn't allowed to keep his, he's still using them. But this is Tom Bing, and this is their bag company. They design and make their own bags in Seattle, and they actually are kind enough to post all of their patterns online for free. So this is the version 3 mask, and it's a 3-layer mask, and I enjoy it. And I actually shrunk it down for my oldest, my 4-year-old, to 75%, and that one fits perfectly for him. So, and that's one of the things. If you want to make a mask, you can make a mask with your material, or you can just make anything, whatever makes you happy. And we also, just looking for my favorite information. So beyond what we can do with masks, there's a couple of links that I'll be sending out when we send out the recording for this. And the first link I wanted to share is from the Woodland Cultural Center. And they're in Brantford, Ontario. And back in May of 2021, they actually held a mask auction online called Covered and Uncovered. And the masks are just absolutely amazing. They're so beautiful, and they are literal pieces of art. So that's one of the things that I wanted to share, because each of those masks have stories, and stories are kind of my bread and butter through my position here, because it's through stories that we're able to share information, but we're also able to help people make connections to the past, the present, and different communities. So I'll be sending out that link, and with anything, parents should always look over digital content before the littles do, just to make sure it's going to be interesting for them, but also that it's age appropriate. And there are so many links out there worldwide. If there's something that you have found that's very interesting that you would like to share, you can send it to me, and then we'll get it out to the rest of the group. But the other link I wanted to share is from the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto. So they are creating an exhibit called Chronicling the Pandemic Through Masks. And we can all think about, masks, they're a throwaway object, but really, for me personally, it's just like, there's a evolution of early masks to later masks. They all tell a story. So throughout the pandemic, they actually were starting to collect masks, because things that were available early during the pandemic, like early 2020, may not be available anymore. So they started collecting things much, before they even were on site because of the lockdown. They were able to start collecting, and they collected masks from all across Canada that tells certain stories, but also all around the world. So the link that I'm going to send you, it's a clip from The National, and they did an interview with a couple of the curators at the ROM about the collection and about some of the masks. Because the other thing about these masks, the ones in front of me, they are wearable, but there is also a way of kind of chronicling your stories or our stories through creating a mask that's completely just art-based. That's just for art. It's not meant to be worn. but you can create something that helps tell your story. And that's something that you can keep at home to pass down to, you know, your family when you're older, or you can donate it to one of your local museums. Because it's these things, the stories that will help us share this information when the pandemic's over and even 20 years from now. When people don't remember the same way that we do now, how much masks affected our lives. So that will be sent with that email when we have this recording live, if you need to revisit it, but also if you're interested in those links. But again, just check them out, and if there's anything you have found that's interesting, please share it with us. I'm always interested in this, especially hearing people's mask stories. Just because we're all so unique and all of our masks favorites and dislikes and that kind of thing are just so interesting. And so before we go though, if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat box. And take any questions about the dyeing process, about the supplies, about the resources, or even about the roots, whatever, if you have any questions. And if not, I'm going to say thank you so much for joining us and choosing us to create a Made by Me kit. And I hope you have an amazing experience, because now this Made by Me kit is now going to be a Made by You piece of art. And I'm so excited to see what you can create. So if you create something and you can email it to me to share an image, or if you're going to post it online, you can just post it and then tag us at #GrayRoots or #MBM Gray Roots. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a great day.